Anybody else? Good morning. I guess it's afternoon for you all. I don't know if anyone else is coming in, but I think we're going to be starting, and I will get this set up for a minute. There are 3 other pilgrims that went with us to Casalitas in Tucson, Arizona, and they'll be sharing in this presentation. And I'm just going to introduce them by name right now, and then later on in the process, when they start to talk, they can introduce themselves briefly. So we have Diane Banas. You want to wave, Diane? Okay. Linda Lysakowski and Monica Del Orto.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're going to be starting with a little bit of a background information after this first Vimeo. That's very short. And then we'll go into what we experienced and saw and felt at Casalitas and some of our stories. And we would ask that if you could hold your questions to the end, that might be helpful.
Don't worry about a thing. Every little thing is gonna be alright. Don't worry about a thing. Every little thing is gonna be alright. I woke up this morning.
Excuse me.
Don't worry about a thing. Every little thing is gonna be alright. I woke up this morning on my horizon. 3 little birds were on my doorstep, singing sweet songs, melody blowing true. And they said, this message is you. They said, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright.
Unless you become like children, you shall not enter the kingdom of God. Hang on a second. I'm so sorry. I'm not sure how I can get to the second slide. Okay,
Janet,
bear with. Yes.
try
Yes.
using the arrows on your keypad. Do arrow up, arrow down.
Don't worry
I have to play it again. Sorry.
about a thing. Every little thing is gonna be alright. I woke up this morning on my horizon. 3 little birds were on my doorstep, singing sweet songs, melody blowing true. And they said, this message is you. They said, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright.
Janet, if you minimize that screen, you should be able to choose.
Don't worry.
Sorry, gonna go back, stop sharing, then come back in again. I'm sorry. It's just not. Bear with me a moment. Okay, Linda.
Oh, okay. I thought you had a few more things that you wanted to say. Do you want to put it on slideshow mode or?
Go ahead.
I was a stranger and you welcomed me. This poster was the first thing that caught my eye in the little chapel at Casa Alitas. We see the refugee in this picture with brown skin and a crown of thorns on his head. Later, I saw a young man that reminded me a lot of this poster. He was crying unashamedly in public. Not knowing his language, all I could do was offer him a cup of water, some tissues, and an embrace. But I knew by the look on his face, he was a stranger who now felt welcomed.
I bear the marks of Jesus on my body. Patrick and Monica pointed out that Jesus on the cross was embracing us. We are called to embrace the refugee. Through their suffering, we came to experience their hope, resilience, and joy in the midst of their pain. And this was a saguaro in our backyard.
The difference between a refugee and a migrant is that the refugee is a person who has been forced to leave their country in order to escape war, poverty, violence. Immigrants is a person who comes to live permanently in a country not their own. I relate to this slide insofar as I am from Veracruz, Mexico, and I came to the US in 2004, married an American and have 3 children, one of whom has autism. My husband and I work hard in helping our children grow in the Catholic faith. Looking at the graph, you see that the majority of asylum seekers are denied. We don't know the reason for that. Sister Janet took this photo from the internet since we couldn't take pictures of our guests. We saw many families such as this. One of the women we met said, "Hope lives in us." The children look very much like their mother in this picture.
What does our church say about immigration? That all people have the right to seek opportunities in their homeland. People have the right to migrate to support their family. Sovereign nations can protect their nation's borders. The lives of refugees should be protected. The human life of the undocumented immigrants should be respected. According to Catholic social teaching, migration should be a matter of choice, not necessity. People have a right not to migrate, and states have a responsibility to provide the minimal conditions that would allow their residents to flourish and realize their God-given rights at home. We know what our church says, but the reality of what happened recently is that while in office, Donald Trump approved Title 42, which did not permit asylum seekers to enter the United States. This law says that the seeker must be in the country where they are seeking asylum. In the beginning, there wasn't any uniform application and things seemed chaotic. The Remain in Mexico law, or MPP, Mexican Protocol Protections, created a backlog of thousands of cases where people were put in refugee camps in northern Mexico towns, putting a strain on already poor areas. Then President Biden lifted the MPP, or Remain in Mexico, and people began pouring in. But he has not yet lifted Title 42, although there is movement towards making that happen. The UN High Commissioner on Refugees reminds us that the United States is not the only high-volume refugee area. Myanmar, for example, formerly known as Burma, has over 1 million people who are fleeing to Bangladesh, a third world country. Other hotspots he reminded us to watch are Sudan, Ethiopia, and Syria, which now has 1 in 4 of their refugees. One in 4 of their residents are refugees.
So migrant families cross or present themselves to the US Border Patrol. And then the Border Patrol holds these families while doing background checks and interviews. Families who pass both are sent to a detention center or are released on the street or sent to a shelter like Casalitas. Those released on the streets are dropped off generally in a remote area in the desert, sometimes without food or water. So there's a group called the Good Samaritans. That's a faith-based group. And one of the site leads at Casalitas, her name is Christy. She belongs to this group, and she goes out and drops off gallons of water in these remote areas. Families coming to Alitas are first sent to ICE processing to contact their US sponsor or their families. And then they receive documents to appear in court for a hearing later on. Families are brought by ICE to Alitas in large bus loads where they receive food, clothing, hygiene supplies, temporary housing, and support. The Alitas teams helps families contact those sponsors or families and arrange travel. And the volunteers assist families in arriving at the bus station or the airport for their trip. Casalitas calls families 3 to 6 months later to check in on their progress. So some who cross the border on their own or are not part of the port of entry, cross through the port of entry, are paying Mexican coyotes up to $3,000 to cross over. And then when they get to the United States side, they turn them in and they're deported all over again. Many surrender to Border Patrol so that they can proceed in getting a hearing to move on. We were expecting the people to be from El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, but instead there were busloads that came from Brazil and Venezuela. I spoke to one of our own parishioners at St. Andrews in Boulder City. She's from Brazil, and she talked about the terribly corrupt government there. And elections are coming up, and they hope that to vote in Lulu, who backs the people and cares for the people. So our journey really began with you, my Racine Dominican sisters and associates, sending us forth with the Dominican blessing. I wore the medal of Our Lady of Guadalupe that Carmen Aguas gave me as a reminder that I took all of you with me. Your prayer support was most evident because what we call miraculous things happen to us, and we only attribute them to prayer. We'll be sharing those a little later.
The generous person will be prosperous, and the one who waters will themselves be watered. Janet blessed both the pilgrims and our 4-vehicle caravan in the parking lot of St. Andrew Catholic Community before we left on October 1st. She reminded us that Father Ron told us the blessing was only good if we kept the speed limit. We all laughed, and later she blessed Paul, one of our pilgrims' right foot. And sure enough, he came in last every time we met up somewhere. So we want to thank those who came to see us off. A number of our parishioners came to see us off. Do you love me? Go and feed my sheep. We're on our way, Lord, to do just that. Thank you for giving us a safe journey thus far. Here we are meeting at Wickenburg, Arizona, at the Horseshoe Cafe for lunch, about halfway to Tucson. Now, you may be wondering who this outspoken, mature woman is. I was the oldest of the group, by the way. My name is Linda Lysakowski, and I'm a member of St. Andrew Catholic Community in Boulder City, Nevada. And I'm also an Adrian Dominican Associate Candidate. My profession is author, trainer, and fundraising consultant to nonprofit organizations. And I use my skills to help raise money for our trip, get donations of money to Casa Alitas, and also to get material donations of toiletries and children's activity materials that we would be taking with us. And I was really thrilled when Sister Janet invited me to come along on this trip.
I was hungry and you gave me pizza. We had just traveled 7 hours and it was my night to cook. So being tired, I took the easy way out and ordered pizza. And look, these ladies with their empty plates in my face. That's the kind of community I had to live in. But actually, they were a great group of people.
A family that prays together stays together. Each morning before going to work, we took time to praise God, ask for the blessings we needed that day, and share our faith stories and feelings. Paul is our church cantor, and he brought his guitar along. Here are the words of a song by Keith Green, which Paul shared. My eyes are dry, my faith is old, my heart is hard, my prayers are cold, and I know how I ought to be, alive to you and dead to me. Well, what can be done for an old heart like mine? Soften it up with oil and wine. The oil is you, your spirit of love. Please wash me anew in the wine of your blood. These were sacred times together and the foundation of our activity for the day. It was mentioned in prayer that morning that we were called to be prophets. One of the prayers used during the week in part read, may God bless you with a restless discomfort about easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships, so that you may seek through boldly and love deeply within your heart. May God bless you with holy anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people, so that you might tirelessly work for justice, freedom, and peace among all people. May God bless you with the gift of tears to shed for those who suffer from pain, rejection, starvation, or the loss of all they cherish, so that you might reach out your hand to comfort them and transform their pain into joy. May God bless you with enough foolishness to believe that you really can make a difference in this world, so that you are able, with God's grace, to do what others claim cannot be done. Later in the week, Father Tony sent us his weekend homily, which we critique at the dinner table. We were most grateful he journeyed with us by text messages and homily.
My name is Diane Vanas, and I am a realtor and have been at St. Andrews for 48 years. I live in Boulder City, my small community, and I love it. That made me realize the people I was going to work with at the border had left their precious homes, and I felt I needed to be there with them. No treasure greater than a healthy body, no happiness than a joyful heart. Our first day was like first day of school. Excitement, apprehension, eagerness, openness. This is our group outside the entrance of Casa Alitas. We were given masks, badges, and shown various areas in which to work. Kitchen, laundry, clothing donation room, children's activity room, transporting guests to bus station and airport, and welcoming and the help desk. As it turned out, we all ended up being floaters and helping out wherever we were needed. Much flexibility was required. Things changed quickly throughout the day. Though we had to wear our KN95 masks on the outside, we were sure our heart was unmasked to receive the guests that would arrive that day. Here is Janice checking in. Within the first 5 minutes of our onset of orientation, the first busload arrived. Christy, our site leader for the day, left us abruptly to meet the busload. There we stood, watching the organized chaos happen. It felt like a triage situation. The county and state provided the buses for the guests to be brought to Casa Alitas, which means House of Wings.
I was a stranger and you received me into your heart, your home. Christy welcomed the guests, gave them an orientation, and assured them that we were not from a government agency and that we would help them in their many needs. Some were disoriented, not knowing where they were. So she told them, you are in Tucson, Arizona, in Los Estados Unidos. You're in Tucson, Arizona, in the United States. And that day, internet went down. So one of our group, Patrick, helped tackle that. He was very good at trying to help get it set up again. And meanwhile, we used a hotspot to help people connect with families. Here you see many guests, and they were given orange shirts and blue microfiber pants and flip-flops to wear before they came to us. So along with the ankle monitors, which you'll see later, it sure appeared like they were prisoners. And Monica would like to tell a little story about a Venezuelan young mother.
When I was interviewing the people that arrived at Casa Alitas, I was struck by a young woman who was crying nonstop. I could tell that her tears came out profusely. When I have to interview her, she then told me about she was very glad she didn't bring the mother and the grandmother with her. She was traveling with her daughter. I did the interview, and later, when she was inside of Casa Alitas in the rooms, she was again on the phone, crying, talking to her mother. and describing how was Yuma Detention Center and Tucson, Casalitas, like hell and heaven.
The water I will give him will become in him a spring, which will provide him with living water and give him eternal life. Our hope is that the drop of water we served these people provided a path for thirsting for the living water as they left Casalitas. I'm sorry, I have to go back here. I touched the wrong screen. Here we have Diane and Linda, Paul, Patty, and Monica ready to spring into action with the water, the fruit cups, and the hot homemade soup. Pope Francis said, life is good when you are happy, but much better when others are happy because of you.
Jesus said, do you want to get well? Each guest was tested for COVID, and 2 men on this busload tested positive. The older men cried and say, we were all together tightly in the detention center, and why did just the 2 of them have COVID? Then he said, we even got the Cuban vaccination. That made us chuckle a bit. He was crying so hard because ICE took his belongings and he knew he wouldn't get his things back. The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. Here you see Paul and Patrick serving hot homemade soup, and on the right, Linda, Patrick, Diane, and Paul serving a hot meal to our guests. One of the ladies said to Linda, I love you, I love you, I love you, and blew a kiss when she saw so much food. This might be a good time to tell you that when someone came up to Linda and asked for sopa, Linda repeated, sopa. The lady said, sí, sopa. So Linda went and got a bar of soap. The lady said, no, sopa. She wanted soup. Linda became just a little more humble that day. Another observation from one of us was that there was a sense of powerlessness when parents couldn't keep their hungry children quiet until we served food. We all have basic needs.
Miraculous things did happen at Casa Alitas. When Janet and I were in the children's art room, as you can see, she wanted to sit down, but there was no chair. So she left to get a chair. And when she came back, there was a chair leaning against the table in back of me. Neither of us saw any chair in that small space when we initially looked. We know that there are many of you praying for us, and we attributed these happenings to prayer. We were going to stop making activity kits for the children because we ran out of stuffed animals. And at that very moment, someone knocked at the door with a large bin full of stuffed animals that had just been donated. Linda experienced the very same kind of thing, filling her snack kits and bread refills, always being present when we needed. The staff and volunteers were so creative and resourceful. When Pima County Health Department closed down our kitchen because we weren't fully licensed. We weren't a fully licensed kitchen. Paul went to Costco and got cases and cases of Roman numerals, Roman noodles, which he paid for himself. Sorry about that.
He then poured
Go ahead.
He then poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and dry them with a towel he had around his waist. I felt like I had actually gone into the fire, that I had washed Jesus' feet. At first, they were like regular looking feet. And then I touched the dirty, mangled, journey-worn feet that spent weeks and months walking toward the promised land. There was pain in those feet, and I touched the pain. These ankle monitors were not lightweight. It seemed like they were randomly given out. And some people had them and some people didn't. And we never did get the story of what behind that. Both men and women were wearing them.
After the guests found out that they were COVID negative, I could cut off their armbands, and one woman yelled out, "Free, free." Another yelled out, "Hallelujah." And then after, another young man came up to me and said, "Cut off this." It was his ankle monitor. I said, "I'm sorry, I was unable to do that. I could not do it."
Linda, you're muted.
Let the children come to me, and do not prevent them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. This paper mache statue of the Statue of Liberty was just inside the door where the immigrants came into Casa Alitas, and it's made to depict the refugees. There was a 2-year-old Brazilian girl who was whining and restless. So Janet took her aside so her mother could listen and proceed with making plans. The girl wanted to climb under the chair to touch the baby's eyes. Then she touched her own eyes and wanted to touch Janet's. They communicated through words, which made no sense to either of them. But Janet then took down her mask so the little girl could see her smile. And that was communication enough. It made all the difference in the little girl's demeanor and behavior. God bless that little one, wherever she ends up.
And then on another occasion, there's a little Haitian boy, and I was showing him a storybook. He commented on things, and it must have been in Creole. He was less than 3 years old. So I was speaking English and Spanish and not much of anything. And in between, he was coloring this picture book. And then he began to use the crayon like a sword and started to gouge out the page of the book. He was less than 3 years old, and he needed to get his aggressions out on that book. And then he smiled at me, and I smiled back. 2 days later, his dad knocked on the children's activity room door where Diane and I were again, and he just waved goodbye. And the little boy with his long dreadlocks threw me a kiss, and the tears just flowed out of my eyes.
Zacchaeus, come down. I must stay at your house today. After our leaving our long days of volunteering, we came home to the Airbnb, which we all shared, and we came to understand the meaning of community as we supported one another and shared our stories of the day. Community was truly a blessing and sustained us in our mission. Several days we went to St. Odelia Church, and the pastor, Father Miguel Mariano, who happens to belong to the priestly fraternity of the Dominican family. Coincidental? Maybe not. After Mass that first Sunday, we went to Casa Alitas, where they were happy that we came on a Sunday because the staff is always shorthanded on Sundays. You give them something to eat. They all ate and had enough. Thanks to generous donors, when we ran out of bread, there always seemed to be a multiplication of the loaves. Here you see Diane and Paul making sandwiches. Diane came to be known as Ms. Schmear because she smeared the bread with mayo, a mixture of mayo, relish, and mustard and she smeared it on each piece of bread. It was Diane who seemed to notice a metamorphosis in the people after they were fed. They came to Casa Alitas tired, fearful, anxious, apprehensive, and after a while, she saw them relax, express gratitude, and show appreciation. Their lives changed, even if only for a little while. The hundreds we fed at Casa Alitas were so grateful for a simple meal. I recall one girl in particular, about 12, who looked so hungry. And I immediately went to her as soon as we had the sandwiches and soup ready. And although I knew she didn't understand my language, I said to her, "You look really hungry." And she nodded her head so excitedly. And just the look on her face after receiving this simple meal of soup and a sandwich showed how relieved and grateful she was. After we shared these kind of stories at dinner, the 8 of us began telling our own ancestral stories to each other. Jesus sent them 2 by 2 and said to them, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest field." Casa Alitas is really blessed to have so many wonderful volunteers, some of whom work there almost every day. This is just one example. My new friend Ron, who, although dealing with numerous physical problems of his own, came there 3 days a week while his wife was receiving dialysis. "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." Peter replied, "Wash not just my feet, but my hands as head as well." In a way, as Sister Janet said, we did feel like we washed many feet at Casa Alitas, but we also washed plenty of dishes. I must confess that this picture of me, when I posted it on Facebook, got more comments than I think any post I've ever done, because my friends and my children, they all know I don't spend much time in the kitchen. It's just not my thing. My late husband, Marty, used to do all the cooking in our house. So in the other photo, you see Paul, Patrick, and Monica and I ready to spring into action as soon as the next busload comes in.
Janice was the great organizer. She was the organizer in the clothing room and faithfully attended to the guests who needed a change of clothing. Some left their old clothes behind to be washed and given out to the next group who needed them. Janice noted that we have many choices of clothing in our department stores, but maybe this is the first time since they left their country that they had a choice of a change of clothing. I nicely organized the baby room so that it would look like Macy's instead of a thrift store. The refugees needed to see the best of what we had.
Patty took a woman to the airport, and this woman had like a 16-minute connection in Denver. Doubting that she would make it on her own, Patty sought out another Spanish-speaking woman who happened to have a seat right across the aisle in the airplane. And she made sure that she helped this refugee woman make her connection. God truly used our gifts and compassionate hearts to help. because the rest of the story is that the site lead, I think it was Christy that day, told Patty to give this woman $20 and she would reimburse Patty. But the woman said, I have $100 left, and so I don't really need the 20. And then she went on to tell her that she had $500 in her shoe and had lost it. We were suspicious since most of the guests didn't have shoes, they had flip-flops. There was another Portuguese woman that said to me by way of the translator on my phone, girl, I couldn't get on WhatsApp. How am I going to buy my ticket? I'm scared. Help me. Her husband was in prison in Brazil and he had the money. She was supposed to connect with a man on WhatsApp and he would buy a ticket for her. But that day, WhatsApp and Facebook were both down globally. And this woman just had a really hard time being consoled. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Patty speaks 4 languages, and she's helped with them worked at American Airlines for 35 years. So she was the perfect one to take refugees to the airport. She may have been the last one to wish them peace on their final leg of their journey at the airport. The conversation below is about a daughter who is waiting for her father's return to Florida. It reads, it was a pleasure being able to help you. Give your dad a hug from me. May God bless him. Equally, we will never forget what you have done for us. Many thanks. 3 days later, Patty followed up with a text to the daughter. Hello, Juliana. Did your dad arrive safely? Yes, he did. Thanks to God and thanks to all of you. Many thanks for everything.
One thing I ask of the Lord, this I seek, to dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, that I may gaze on the loveliness of the Lord and contemplate his temple. I took some time to contemplate Jesus on the cross through this saguaro, and it was the same face I saw in the refugees, as I did in takes with them. On the right side of the screen, I would like to share a story about a Nicaraguan family with 2 children ages 3 and 14. The mother, the father, and the 2 kids came through Veracruz, the state that I am from, which is a very dangerous state. The narcos kidnap young people or people, and sometimes they kill them. So I know how dangerous is Veracruz. So while I was interviewing the mother, I can see the little kid of 3 years old, playing with the bag with the crayons and the stuffed animals that Casalitas provide. But I also see the 14-year-old boy with his face traumatized. I am pretty sure he was not understanding what was happening. The family of 4 came in a bus. And by Veracruz, people start jumping out of the bus. When they arrived to the border, the father wasn't there. The mother had his ID. So then they passed to United States. And I just cannot imagine the pain of the kid and the trauma, the mother. I hope he made it to the United States. Once they lost their families here or they get separated, they can find them in other centers. But if they are out in Mexico, it's very difficult and they don't know what happened with the father. That was a face and a family that will stay with me forever.
Thank you, Monica. I am the resurrection and the life. And we thank Monica for providing opportunities to experience moments of resurrection as she asked a Brazilian woman, Eliana, to teach her the samba.
Ahora puedo decir que una brasileña me enseñó. Oh, esa parte. How am I doing, Sister Janet?
Muy bien.
How am I doing? He doesn't tell me.
And then there was a single man from Venezuela who tried to teach Monica a more simple form of the samba. For me, this spoke of Eucharist because do this in memory of me. They had no music, but they were moving their feet. So they had to remember the music in their heads. They had to remember the good times away from the pain and struggle. They remembered the body of Christ through that dance. Again, we couldn't take pictures of their faces. Solamente ella. La 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 la. Ya, ya. Only his feet, solamente los pies.
They devoted themselves to the communal life, to the breaking of the bread, and to the prayers. Some of us spent early morning moments outside in the backyard of our Airbnb before prayer, connecting through community, sharing our lives, and gaining strength for the mission of the day. Here, some of us continue to bond, to support one another, and share our lives.
I wanted so much to eat this Passover meal with you before I suffer. This was the second day, and we were still high energy and didn't know what would lie ahead. I provided a feast of antipasta and spaghetti and meatballs, and we ate our fill. That was our evening meal. And a little wine.
On the third day, a wedding took place in Cana in Galilee. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." As our workday ended, we sat around a table sharing our experiences, sometimes crying, often laughing, and savoring the wine and celebrating the work of our day. We didn't realize how much this group enjoyed a good bottle of wine, and we didn't have anybody there to make more for us when it was empty.
The Lord appeared to Abraham as he sat at the entrance of the tent. Looking up, he saw 3 men standing nearby, and he ran to greet them. "Let some water be brought that you may bathe your feet, and then rest yourselves under the tree. Let me bring you a little food that you may really refresh yourself, and afterwards you may go on your way." Patrick's reflection on this experience was in making the connection with seeing men at Home Depot and Lowe's, and now he has a deeper solidarity, remembering his work on the tent with them. He realized that we are a wealthy nation, a wealthy people, a wealthy culture. We have everything. That day, we had 5 big busloads of people coming, over 300 people in all. We had to use another tent in the main part of the center because one bus came after the other.
"I will be found by you," declares the Lord, "and will bring you back from captivity." One day I spotted an older man in the crowd, and he caught my eye, I believe, because he was probably the oldest of the people that I saw coming in. He was definitely older than the rest of the exiles. And soon after seeing him, I walked into the chapel that you can see here because I wanted a moment of prayer of my own. And I saw the man kneeling on the bare floor before the altarcita. I backed out quietly, sensing he had a need to be alone with God. Later, someone told me that while doing intake with this man, the first question he asked was, "When can I go pray?"
I will gather you from all the nations and places and bring you back to the place from which I carried you into exile. You will find me with you, and I will change your lot. Families belong together. Manuel was separated from his brother Jose, and Jose had the cell phone. There was no way to connect his brother, so he stayed at Casa Alitas a few days longer, hoping that the next busload would have his brother on it. We never found out what happened to him or his brother.
When you call me, I will listen to you. When you seek me with all your heart, you will find me with you, and I will change your lot. In the middle of this slide are the words, Jesus is enough. That is a statement of faith that the refugees shared. When you seek me with all your heart, you will find me with you, and I will change your lot.
For I know well the plans I have in mind for you. Plans for your welfare, not your woe. Plans to give you a future full of hope. These walls tell their own stories. Imagine leaving behind your whole life in your country to venture out anew, trusting that things will get better.
I find my country in this wall. As I mentioned, I am from Veracruz, Mexico, and I can see many countries' names written on it, just like the body of Christ. We are one.
Where do you live, teacher? Come and see. This is a lady from Ecuador teaching her son the English alphabet. Or, we wondered, perhaps he was teaching her. Even through their difficult journeys, a mother still has the love to take time with her child.
Come to me, all of you who are weary and heavily burdened, and I will give you rest. Here on the left, we see Paul resting in a supine position with his legs leaning against the table. Lauren, who is not part of our group, but she lived in north of Tucson. She comes to volunteer quite frequently. She was simply resting her leg on a chair. And then on the right, there's Diane resting in a sitting position. It reminds me of various ways in which we pray. One is not better than the other if we are resting in God's spirit of love.
While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. The inn at Casa Alitas had this wing of the building where single men stayed. A similar wing housed families. Casa Alitas provide a room at the inn for all guests and manages 2 hotels besides, one for the overflow at the inn and one for the COVID positive guests who will be quarantined. They assure a room for everyone. Do we make room in the inn of our hearts? The building that houses Casa Alitas was previously a juvenile detention center. Here you see the showers where each one is finally able to shower. And for some, that hadn't been possible for 10 days or more. Christy, our site lead, joked with them that they could take 2 showers if they wanted to. They even joked with each other about smelling bad before they had a chance to take a shower. Notice the clean towels in the basket provided by the faithful laundry group.
Foxes have dens and birds of the sky have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to rest his head. This is not the Hilton Hotel, but it's a place of rest for a night or two before the refugees move on. This is what the shelter rooms look like at Casa Alitas. And it all sounds very nice and comfortable when you just talk about it without seeing it. But the refugees were thankful for a place to lay their heads. Do you not know that I am your mother? These were words spoken to Juan Diego. Our Lady of Guadalupe is the unifier of the Americas, and her presence on the wall at the Casa Alitas remind us of that, with guests coming from so many Latin American countries.
It was kind of you to help me in my troubles. The staff, volunteers, and even the refugees themselves helped one another in their need. We found this on the wall in the garden room.
God was very pleased with creation and saw that it was very good. These mosaics and pictures remind us that creation is good for humankind, and that even in our darkest hours, we can rejoice in God's creation and become co-creators of God's love for humankind. The art pieces came from Los Artes.
God loves a joyful spirit. Though our bodies were drained of energy, we still had enough life to share on our way home, and we were re-energized by each other. Notice the Border Patrol truck stopped right next to us. We were on high alert now with a new consciousness.
I had a translator app for those who spoke Portuguese. And here's a touching conversation I think. You are an angel. God bless your life greatly. Michael was a dream for me. He stepped on this land and God realized it. I went to spend a day of struggle. It seems like hell inside immigration. And today, you treat us with affection. It's a great satisfaction. Lais left us hungry with food that we didn't wrap our stomachs around. I died, for example, burritos all the time. And they were sharing with us that they had dried burritos, sometimes cold, and other times they were put in the microwave. The children, some of them came to us with fevers and they were vomiting. And the parents said it's because they've been taking cold showers and not having good food. I had gone to Los Algodones near Yuma, Arizona, just 2 weeks before going to Tucson. And I took this picture of the wall. It's a close-up and you can see how high the metal wall is when you compare it to the size of the people. So this is from the Mexico side. This was also taken in Los Algodones from the Mexico side. Notice the camera on the top of the wall.
Pope Francis tells us peace builds bridges, whereas hatred is the builder of walls. You must decide in life, either I will make bridges or I will make walls. Walls divide and hatred grows. Where there is division, hatred grows. Bridges unite. And when there is a bridge, hatred can go away because I can hear the other and speak with the other. 3 of us went down to the border on our day off. This is the wall seen from Nogales on the United States side. Notice how it cuts through residential property, disturbing the plant and animal life as well as the people. Imagine having this in your backyard.
And the wall goes on for miles and miles and miles. On my previous trip to Los Algodones, about 40 miles from the border, we came across this checkpoint in the middle of nowhere. Emily and I went through it very quickly because we were white.
We need to strengthen the conviction that we are all one single human family. Do you hear the cries? Do we hear the cries?
May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you all, my sisters and brothers. Thank you for allowing us to share our sacred moments. Now we would like to have each one briefly share what the experience meant for them and me. I will begin. I am very thankful and grateful with God for giving me the opportunity to go to Casa Alitas. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and we did what we did because he gave us the strength. There's a phrase of Saint Teresa of Calcutta that says, every work of love carried out with all the heart will always bring people closer to God. Well, these refugees carried all their hearts and they brought me closer to God. It was a great experience. You see the poor, the suffering, but you also see God and you see joy and the opportunity of sharing some hours of my life fill my heart with joy. And I will be always thankful with God, and everyone that I talk to in that trip is always in my prayers. I will be always in my heart.
Thank you, Monica.
Thanks.
What has the border experience left me with? We had a lot of experiences of miracles that happened. God is in charge, and when we needed things, he gave them to us. He's in charge, we're not in charge. We were sent there at the perfect time. We were 8 people, and that's a lot of volunteers all at once, and we were there on weekends. So we were needed at the right time, and that's why we were sent there. And we want to thank you for sending us there. We have so much here in the United States, and we feel for these people. And anyway, God was in charge, and now I know He definitely gives us what we need. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I've always believed that one of our responsibilities here on earth is to see the face of Jesus in everyone we meet. And I have to say, I saw the face of Jesus in every one of the hundreds of the guests that we welcomed that I got an opportunity to meet. I've told you about 3 faces that I'll never forget. The young man crying unashamedly in public, which in his culture, I think really took a lot of courage. And the older man who wanted to know first when he would have a chance to pray. And then the young girl who expressed her gratitude for just a simple sandwich and soup, as though it was a full course dinner. Those faces, I think, will remain with me forever. And when I returned home, I realized that those faces were sent to remind me to see the face of Jesus in everyone. Those who sometimes annoy me, those who maybe are rude to me, and those who, frankly, I just don't like very much. But I realize that I need to see the face of Jesus in those people as well as I saw it in the faces of the refugees. And even more powerful for me, I think, is knowing that every time I share this story with people, it's made an impact on them and has changed them. So changing others has been really part of this experience for me. And I also thank the sisters and everyone who helped send us on this journey.
Thank you, Linda. And Linda has written a book called The Face of Jesus. This transforming experience has helped me see things differently, namely through the lenses of the refugees. I experienced sacred moments when I saw the hope, the resilience, the faith of the people. We changed because of the people, and they changed because of us. Working together and living in community gave me the support needed to carry out that mission. And I've been challenged to live in a new way, which is unfolding little by little. And depending on the connections I make to the stories and the experiences that I've been exposed to. And seeing the faces of the suffering face of the suffering Christ, as well as being taken up into moments of resurrection, put me in solidarity and stretched me to expand, to be more inclusive. I need still to sit in the pain and to be present to it. It is there that the people will teach me hope and the joy of inner freedom. Yes, I was affected by the fact that so many people were in need at one time, just the volume of it all, and also by the intensity of the moment. As Diane said so well, we can only care for the person or the issue in front of us right now. Margaret Mace recently, OP, asked the question, is who I am enough to provide a word of encouragement and hope for those who are suffering? Is who I am enough to provide a word of challenge to those who turn a blind eye to the human condition? We are all part of a larger life that contains really a lot of unknown possibilities. And I thank you each for journeying with us through this experience. Many blessings and much love to each of you. And if you have any questions or comments, you can unmute now and ask them.
Thank you, Janet, Diane, Monica, Linda, for going for us who couldn't go. We were with you. Thank you.
And we felt that.
Thank you for being with us.
I would like to say, I just want to thank you for all that you did and are, and what you learned from this, and how it fills your whole soul. This just touched me because I was a missionary in Bolivia, and I lived through the things you said, plus bombing and shooting. But I mean, it just touched me because it just brought me, all this back to me again. I just want to say thank you and God bless you for all you are and have been and are going to be.
I just want to be courageous enough, I guess, to say to you, I've talked to Lisa Kane and Ann Pratt, and with their backgrounds, both of them have told me that probably what I have experienced or am experiencing is vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue. So I thought I was ready for the border. I've fought this a lot during prayer. And I remember stories of working with first generation Mexicans and crying with the people when they talked about how they came over to the United States and the trouble they had, and even their child hanging on to the Rio Grande Bridge and dying to his death in front of him. So I thought that I could just listen to those stories again, but I was not ready for the busloads and busloads and busloads of people that kept coming and the intensity of it all. And I wasn't trained for the triage that I experienced. So be patient with me.
Yes, your prayer presentation was just right. It was the best way you could share. Thank you again.
And I think if any of you feel that you were lacking because you weren't able to be there, we felt that even when we were there. Many of us felt like, well, I'm just making sandwiches or I'm just stuffing bags. I'm not really helping. But when we saw the look on the face of those people, when they got the children's activity bags or the snack bags or the bag with toothpaste, it all meant something. And you being with us meant a lot.
It's hard to respond. It really is a profound experience, and you shared it with us. It was really excellently done. I think with Janet, just the busloads and busloads of people, and all in need. It must have just used all your resources to deal with it. It was so intense. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for sharing your experience with us. And Janet, we love you.
Thank you.
We love her too.
I hope you experienced a lot of love and support. Patience, I don't know, be patient with yourself, my dear. What you're going through is heavy and it's a lot for all four of you. That's a lot to handle and it takes time. We don't know how it all affects us. Just take care. Blessings. God love you. We love you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And it really, I can't go back enough to that sense of community enough. We did not know each other that well. I mean, here and there might have been 2 or 3 that knew each other, but to come together as a group that you were kind of thrown there, but what carried us is we had a vision, we had a mission, and everybody was glued on that mission. And when we had preparation meetings ahead of time, we made sure that we said we're not there for a political reason to polarize one another or anything else, or to get our expression of our opinions. We're here for Matthew 25. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was hungry and you gave me to eat. So I just love the stories that people shared, and I logged along the way. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to put that together in a presentation. But the insights, Diane's, for example, working in that clothing room, how she made sure she arranged brand new things so that the people would see them immediately and put them on display. She wanted it to be Macy's and not the thrift store. Just those kinds of heart pieces just spoke to me all along, and that's what carried me. And then I think when I got back, everything hit. So, and God uses, treats us in different ways. And so with the men experience, right now, one is processing, the other one is can't allow it to come in deeper. So, and that's okay. It's all okay wherever, if they show up for things, that's good. And if they decided yesterday they didn't want to come for debriefing, that's okay too. But the people that came, it was powerful, and we'll continue to support one another.
I found your experience of community to be very hopeful. I think the whole world is hungry for community, and there's just many forms of it. And what you displayed for us was how a short period of time living that intensely together is such a treasure.
Thank you. I think there were probably times when some of us got on other people's nerves, and some of us were talkers and some of us are more quiet, but we all managed to, I think, love each other. And some people chose to just go into their room and be by themselves, and that was okay too. And others of us were perhaps a little more boisterous and talkative, but it was although I've lived in a very large family, because I have a very large family, I think it wasn't a new experience for me, but I think it was for some people who are not accustomed to all that noise and all that confusion going on around us, but we managed to survive it quite well, I think. And we're all still friends. Better friends now than we were before, I think.
Monica shared her autistic daughter, who's 16. She had conversation with her quite often, and she would show her phone to us, and we would all participate in her joy of being united with her family from a distance. So that was fun too. Well, thank you. It's time for us to go and get some dinner. We're 2 hours behind you, so it's lunchtime. And thank you all for coming. And if anybody wants this, Lisa has it recorded, so I don't know how she wants to do anything with that, but I just am so grateful for community. Thank you.
It was great meeting you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Janet.
you.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
to all of you.
Bye.
Bye.